Hi, and welcome back to This Week in Voice, Season 6, Episode 5. My name is Bradley Metrock. I'm CEO of a company called Project Voice, now general partner of Project Voice Capital Partners, a venture fund in the space. Thank you for joining us. If you're joining us on YouTube or on your podcast provider of choice. We have a fantastic guest panel today, and we're going to get on into it. Our first guest is Audrey Arbeeny. Audrey, say hello. And you're on mute.
Hi, Bradley. Thank you for having me on. I'm Audrey Arbeeny. I'm the CEO, founder, executive producer of Audiobrain. We are a global sonic branding firm. And what that is we take the creative, strategic, and a very holistic approach to music, sound, voice, and vibration. We have a strategy and we leverage it across every relevant touch point of a brand so that you have a cohesive experience for your customer and you have a unified communication for your brand.
Audrey, thank you for being part of this with us.
Thank you.
One of a kind. Appreciate you setting the time aside.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Paul Welham of Cereproc. Paul, say hello.
Hi. Thank you for having me, Bradley.
Yeah, of course. So, Paul, tell us who you are and tell us about Cereproc and what y'all do.
I'm one of the founders of Cereproc. We've been going since about 2005. We specialize in only speech synthesis. So we do first people to introduce character for speech synthesis. We also got into the voice cloning game very early on with, we did Roger Ebert. If any of you remember Roger Ebert, the film critic.
Yes, I do.
So that's all we do. So we mainly work with systems integrators who take our product and incorporate it into their solution, which they sell on. But so we work across all marketplaces. We're not focused on one vertical. We're truly horizontal. So we're in, we call centers, governments users, education companies users, AAC companies users, transport companies users. And that's probably why a lot of you haven't heard of us, because our route to market is through systems integrators, although we do sell our products off our website direct to end users. So we have a B2B product as well. So that's us in a nutshell.
Excellent. Yeah. And thank you very much. You're super unique company. Thank you for making the time to be on the show today, Paul. Our third and final guest is Sean Austin of Helios. Sean, say hello.
Hey, good morning, Bradley. I appreciate the invite to be here and looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, Sean. You got an interesting company as well. Take a moment, tell us who you are, and tell us about Helios.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sean Austin, I'm a co-founder and CEO of Helios. We're the only company in the world right now that takes the tone of voice, really how somebody communicates versus just the words that they're saying, and allows hedge funds, really asset managers globally, to integrate better decisioning in their strategies. So hedge funds are, as we can imagine, a tough nut to crack, a tough bunch, a lot of smart guys and gals in that space. We are ahead of the game, have ambitions to go beyond it with our platform, but very much producing a very unique data feed for the world in finance.
Excellent. Sean, thank you for being here. I appreciate you as well. So with that, we'll get to the news. And this episode is a little bit different. So this group, we were going to record this a couple of weeks ago, and we're not able to do that with the holidays. So our stories, and this has happened before, our stories have got, a week or two of age, but they're in December, it really doesn't make that much difference anyway. We're going to start with, and I'm going to read this headline out loud from Reuters about SoundHound. Voice assistant maker SoundHound to go public via $2 billion SPAC deal. Now, SoundHound is one of the original players in the space, a longtime participant in the voice and AI sector. And to see this sort of deal go down, very interesting, caused a lot of conversation, and I think most of it's good. Sean, I'm going to start with you. We're going to rotate as we go through. Sean, I'm going to start with you and go in reverse order of the introductions. With this story and this little bit of news, you've got a company that is making a lot of waves. What stood out to you with this sort of deal that SoundHound did in this article?
Yeah, besides the world right now is SPAC heavy. So it's, of course, a vehicle of choice for a lot of very high growth potential companies. I think back to knowing SoundHound as a identifier for just music, right? Way back to the Shazam days. And like you said, one of the early players, you go to their website now, their headline is connecting people with brands through conversational technology. You think about the niche that they started with, and now this wide domain that's getting recognized as high growth. So, I mean, that jumps out to me, understanding and being in the space for a while. Certainly seeing them go wide and being now a connector or a platform or really like the infrastructure certainly is a really bullish, positive statements happening in the space and where it's moving towards.
SPACs, I'll ask you a follow-up here and then I'll move on to Paul. SPACs are not always viewed as a positive when some companies have used them. They've sort of been a mixed bag. My personal feeling on SoundHound is that it is a positive for several reasons, but the question is for you. Do you view it as a positive that they finance themselves this way, or have some other thoughts on it?
Yeah, and I think you're totally right. I mean, in the world of SPACs, it's definitely not a 100% binary. It's always a positive, right? There's certain liquidity measures and thinking that goes into it and strategy. For this one specifically, I see it really strongly, really positively. They have some major brands in place from Honda to Deutsche Telekom, I believe with T-Mobile, Mercedes-Benz, right, Kia. They have a massive footprint, one that I believe gives them an advantage. And without knowing the guys personally or the girls driving it, guys and gals, I would say they see the opportunity in front of them. So it's back for them. It's a major growth lever, major liquidity event for potentially investors or individuals in the company, and that lets them attack a space that is one we're all looking at. Very important, very fast growing, and for me, definitely positive from what I've seen from them.
Excellent. So, Paul, I'm going to go to you and a similar question. SoundHound, longtime player in the space, interesting player in the space. You are also
Very interesting
player in the space. Your thoughts when you look at this news and this article?
I think I always think anything like this is good for the tech industry, whatever aspects of it you're in. In terms of SoundHound, I think they started with a really good niche. They've expanded out of that. They've done very well. Although, they're using other people's technology all the time. For their text-to-speech, they're mainly using ReadSpeaker. So you kind of wonder if part of the funding is hopefully to buy in technology, but they own it all themselves, or to develop it themselves, I guess. I'd feel a bit exposed if I was, had a product like they've got, or a range of solutions like they've got, and I was very dependent on other people to deliver it, some of it. That's my, but as I say, I see it as a positive move.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thought. That so you think maybe some of the financing might enable them to bring some stuff in house? That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, you kind of wonder why a successful business would go for financing like this. I get the impression from what I've read about this type of finance, and as you said, it's not that popular with a lot of people. So I was trying to work out what the logic was.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, because that thought didn't necessarily cross my mind, though maybe it should have. That's great. Audrey, I'm going to go to you and ask the same thing. You come at this from a little bit different of an angle, but I'm interested to hear your point of view, because you've been around this space as long as anybody. When you look at this story and what SoundHound has done here, what are your thoughts?
For SoundHound, it's a very good thing. I think going down as a SPAC deal is good for them, in my opinion. I think it's growing in popularity. It has gone gigantic in the past year. And I think for them, it's suitable because it's fast. It's a fast way to get this going. And I think that their intent is to then bring other things in, just as Paul said. But I think I've been doing this for 25 years. And I know SoundHound from when SoundHound was an original player. And to see how they've changed their model and moved it and been successful at it, I have a very strong feeling that we're seeing the evolution of how a lot of deals get done. And I don't think SPAC was going to work for everybody. I really don't. So it's got to be the right company, the right fit, the right offering. And in this case, first of all, I was blown away by the money. And second of all, like really blown away by the money. And second of all, I thought that I follow them quite closely, and I thought it's probably going to be a pretty powerful deal.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. I think that the dollar figure was
Mind-blowing.
Illuminating is perhaps my word choice. No, look, I mean, we all know those folks.
It was about $220 million, wasn't it, if I remember rightly?
For what, the SPAC deal?
Yeah.
2 billion, 2.1 billion. And you're on mute.
Thought I remember from the press release it was like 220 million, but I pass.
Yeah, so what are you saying? Out of the 2 billion, it was the 200 million was some particular part of it? Oh, you're back on mute.
Yeah, I thought there was a they were going to get about 244 million or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Oh yeah, no, you might be further in the weeds on the specific implications of the financing than I am, for sure. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean the dollar figure, the headline 2 billion is eye-popping. If it is 250 million that flows to them, that's fairly significant cash flow also. And it'll be interesting to see what they do. They've typically been a pretty conservative organization, and so I think that's, from my standpoint, seeing this sort of proactive, potentially perceived as even aggressive sort of move.
But if you look at the sort of history of the last, 15 years, 16 years since we've been going, I had the financial crash. Various other issues that occurred, and the last 2 years have been interesting as well. So it's probably good to proceed with caution under the present circumstances, I would say.
Sure.
I think, Paul, you were hitting the market cap, the valuation there being 2 billion, right? The value to the organization versus proceeds. So definitely high growth, at least from that valuation of 2 billion, right?
Yeah. No, so we're in alignment that this is it's good, but worth watching, which is kind of what it feels like. Story number 2, and I'm going to read this. It's from The Verge. Now Alexa can tell Netflix to just, quote, play something. So Paul, I'm going to start with you, and then Audrey, and then Sean on this one. I love things like this because, to me, it kind of provides a glimpse of the future of interacting with AI, right? I mean, tell it to play something, as opposed to me having to figure everything out. I got to figure out what I want to play. No, how about you just tell me? So my question for you is, what stood out? And then this is the only story related to Alexa we have on the docket, which itself is unusual because usually there's more than one. Your thoughts on your thoughts on the story, but also on the Alexa ecosystem, where the Alexa ecosystem stands currently in your mind. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of it.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a great sort of feature, if you like, to add to Alexa, that and hopefully Alexa will learn to know what you like as well. So I'm assuming it's going to tie into Netflix and what you've said you like on Netflix in the past or whatever. So in terms of Alexa, and I'm always kind of amazed with Alexa. Lots of corporations let Alexa do a lot of their legwork for them, where they're sort of giving control of their customer to Alexa, or to, you know, that would be my concern as if I was running a company such as Netflix.
I mean, yeah, if it's a different environment, right, than it was in 2017, 2018, where you had companies signing up left and right to participate in the Alexa ecosystem, and privacy / data security was a muted concern. Now it's a loud concern, which is a totally separate issue. And Audrey, I'll segue that to ask you the same question. You know, what stood out to you with this article, and your thoughts on where the Alexa ecosystem stands at, you know, at the end of 2021? And you're on mute.
I should just leave it on. I thought it was very strategic. I thought that it was smart to go with Netflix when there was so many other players that they could have done this with, play something. I think in a way they're competing in a little way with themselves, with Prime, which surprised me, but it doesn't. Because if you read between the lines, they say for now. And those two words, for now, they're aligning with a company that's doing stuff that's the future, in my opinion, Netflix, and the way Netflix is operating, and the loyalty and the experience design. But it's those words, for now. And if they're doing it with you know, you have to have the fire also. And I think it's a launching pad. I think it's going to go out beyond Netflix once it's really stabilized with Netflix.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that. And Sean, I want to ask you the same question. You know, is this how does this news strike you? Is it interesting? Is it something more than interesting? And your thoughts on the Alexa ecosystem?
First off, I love anywhere more voice technology gets in when I'm watching all my series, binging them. So off the bat, always a positive. But I would go with Audrey 100%. This idea that Amazon can potentially get more data, you know, more volume and understanding. I mean, that's the golden, you know, path. You know, that's the well of oil, as it were, for all these systems. So I'm sure that's a piece of the play for them. Like Audrey said, there's a for now is an important quality there. The kind of like unique part, or one that strikes me, Bradley, to your question, is we're seeing voice become and is the most natural interface, right? So there's I think a consumerization, or call it a widespread adoption, that I'm very much excited about. But seeing that at one of the most, you know, dominant streaming providers now, with one of the most dominant companies or largest market cap companies on the planet, I mean, it's quite a signal that this natural interface that everybody has from essentially early days of life is starting to really connect with the machine. So I guess there's only one step beyond that, which is reading our thoughts. So we'll leave that for another podcast, Bradley, or another show entirely. But the voice, just kind of like adoption to it, it's fantastic to see. It's going to be there in front and center, just for millions of more people.
You know, Alexa is doing something else. They have a team working on the singular query, what should I read next? And the guy in charge of that, he had a successful project with the Starfinder game for Alexa, and they brought him over, and they're working on answering that question. So it feels like Amazon's moving the right direction in terms of making this more proactive and contextual. And I guess we're going to spend 2022 having a bunch of episodes of this show discussing privacy, because that's about.
I think the danger is it takes away from the individual, you know, looking at other things. You know, if it gets, you know, you won't discover new things if you're always being told what going to like, if you see what I mean. I think there's a danger for us. I think it's a good move. I mean, I'm not anything like that to me is a great move, as long as they don't use it really just to push more things down people's throats, I guess.
The devil's in the execution, Alexa.
Well,
Alexa's going to listen to me around my house, and whatever it is it's hearing, and I go to ask it, what should I read next, or Netflix, what should you play for me, and it'll say, well, you're kind of stupid, so maybe we should play this for you. You know what I mean, or whatever. I mean, I could see it, to your point, Paul, I could see them using it to commoditize.
Well, I didn't really believe this until recently, but I was talking about nappies. My daughter's just had her first baby, and suddenly I got a number of, when I was on YouTube, I started getting adverts about nappies and things like that. I was like, oh, sorry, diapers to you guys. So I was kind of, hey, it is true then. There you go. Because I've never done any searches on it. But,
I think that's Google's new mantra too. The do no evil thing from long ago. I think is know what you want before you want it. I think it's what the world we're morphing into. You're saying, Paul. That
is a very valid fact. Yeah.
A company that I think does this really well, and Audrey, I would think you would agree, is Spotify. I love Spotify, and when I use Spotify, they have a uncanny, almost borderline magical maybe to put recommendations in front of me. And Sean, I forgot you work for Spotify, so you agree.
I'm partially responsible for those those little moments apparently that you're having.
Yeah,
been a few years, but
just thank you then, because I really love Spotify.
And so when it works well, it's magical, but when it works poorly, it's obtrusive and gross. So, I guess time will tell. I have hope for Amazon here, but anyway, I guess we all sort of view this as a positive. Any closing thoughts before we move on to the next one?
The closer we get to having the machine feel like you're talking to a person, I think is a good one. Going through like 1,000 different screens and learning 1,000 new UIs. I mean, I've lived in that world of software development, and I think it's just I don't feel that's a positive. It's sort of an artifact of just what we've done as a global community building software. So this is a good move, I think, in this direction.
Yeah, no, I hope so. Story number 3, voice, and this is from the Economic Times in India. Voice AI company Skit looks to hire 1,000 people across US, Southeast Asia, and India. So on occasion, I'll throw in articles like this that sort of represent growth for different companies. And here, I think it's a bit of a Rorschach test where you could zone in on the fact that there's international traction with voice and AI. There's a number of things that maybe you could zero in on. Audrey, I'm going to start with you. What in particular stood out, if anything, about this piece?
What stood out was how totally unsurprised I was, because I could judge by the type of, we've had our company for 18 years. We work all over the world. We do very high profile projects, and the projects that have been coming in the past couple of years from that region, for Southeast Asia, from Qatar, it did not surprise me at all, because we get a lot of calls. We've been doing projects that you would not have heard from 5-6 years ago. They're really booming and into this. So it does not surprise me whatsoever. And that's how I felt when I read it.
Yeah, no, I think that's that was my reaction as well. Not necessarily from the geographical point of view, but it's like, oh, look, here's another company just from a voice and AI standpoint broadly, that's capturing some tailwind and going somewhere. Sean, I'm going to ask you the same question. What, if anything, in particular stood out to you from this piece?
Yeah, the enterprise lean is a big one here. So customer experience for the enterprise, and they actually have a very similar mission to when we talked about SoundHound earlier in the show. But the enterprise lean for me, I mean, it's a very different animal. The fact that this is an India-specific investment to crack into that, it looked like there was spend and growth across the board for what they're looking to invest in. Sort of a more general response. Everything's getting some growth to it, but having, you mentioned international, Bradley, but having a sole focus of growth in India around that enterprise and adoption for there just jumps out to me that there's clearly interest abroad. There's clearly an opportunity to expand that customer experience, and that CX is something the enterprise cares about more and more, right? Contact centers and beyond.
Now
we got you, Bradley, on mute.
Yeah, no, that's a great point as well, and that'll let me segue naturally to Paul asking you the same question. Heard a couple points of view.
I read it with great interest. I mean, I've actually in the past had responsibility for opening offices in other countries, and they have got quite ambitious growth plans. I mean, they want to achieve 10 times growth over the next year. I think that's probably a little bit unrealistic personally. It takes a lot of time and effort to set up new operations in new countries because it's so many things are different in each country. Got a lot of cultural differences. Hiring and firing people is different everywhere. So I read it and thought interesting. I wonder how successful they will be.
Yeah,
I mean, I took it. My take on it as well was it was aimed at getting growth in the US market more than anything, and it also implied a lot of the people they were taking on were salespeople rather than engineers. So they must have a fairly good product group of people out in India so they can deploy stuff. Hopefully,
that's something. Oh, go ahead, Audrey.
And some of the projects that we've done are being geared towards the American market and other countries. They're just coming out of that region, and they didn't before.
Yeah, I have to second that because we're seeing a definitely growing and a healthy and growing number of companies out of India for sure. As well as other localities in that neck of the woods. They've
totally sort of liberalized their economy over the last 20 years. So that before it was very difficult to do business with India, either way, in or out, basically. I actually looked after an operation in India for about 4 years. It was quite an interesting experience.
Well, it feels like something shifted because a lot of these guys, we get our share of pings from companies that want to come to the United States and that they've maybe got a foothold here. They've got something going on, a person or two, and they're looking to do more. And that's starting to become a common refrain to have cut your teeth in India and now you're coming over here. So that's I have to totally. I mean, that's just what our experience has been. Any closing thoughts on this story before we move on to the last one?
No, but I say good luck to them.
Oh yeah, no, they're going to need it. It's starting to get crowded in here too.
Yeah.
Kind of pointed out.
I was trying to work out what the differentiator was, and I couldn't really see one. So, there's a lot of people competing for that space, I would say.
Yeah, no, I think just about every space. It's well, that'll be a topic for another time. Is that post-pandemic, it's getting crowded in here, no matter what your particular niche is or vertical or approach. We will go to our last story here. Story number 4. This is from Voicebot. ReadSpeaker debuts voice user interface platform for Nintendo Switch. And like a number of these stories, I think there's a few different things that perhaps you could gravitate to. Where I personally gravitate to is the evolution of voice oriented gaming and voice in gaming. And it's not quite at a level I would call mature. It's still in the oven and cooking. It's not out of the oven yet, but you know, it's starting to develop some form and definition, in my opinion. Sean, I'm gonna start with you, and then Paul, I'll go to you, and then Audrey, I'll close with you. Do you agree with that? Do you think that voice in gaming is prime? You think it's too premature? Anything else stand out to you with this?
Yeah, I don't think it's premature in the sense that it needs incorporation. It has been a part of it. I mean, think about multiplayer games that people are discussing and talking with, or just AI bots that have existed for some time. I would make sure, Bradley, we don't get through a show without mentioning the metaverse and everything that's coming down the pipe with that new rebranding and company. But the idea that these virtual worlds you would converse in, right? That now we know extreme investment being done in it. It's not, you know, a little bit of a rebrand there, but tons of investment will be coming in used to ramp up. I think there's a perfect overlap with what we're seeing now on, you know, very prolific devices that are not metaversey, I would say, but the incoming, you know, gaming world that will be in there, the social aspect to it. And I would expect, and I think we've already seen the voice piece of it too. So I think kind of like a lot of these themes, it's needed, important overlap with what we're seeing coming in the future in the next 10 years. And again, getting this out to now a different non-enterprise niche, totally downstream, I think with consumers and individuals, just hammers home the point that it's the most real interface and one that needs to be heavily thought of, adopted, and used.
Paul, this is your neck of the woods. This is something that you know, obviously.
I've always been very disappointed by the games companies not taking up synthetic speech quicker than they have. I mean, they're very much into audio prompts in games.
Yeah,
I've always thought I'd always thought it'd be great if you could clone your voice, and you know, when you're not online on a platform, some AI bot could be playing for you using your voice, etc., and keeping it going for you.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you know, the problem with a lot of games is the content can be dynamic, but they make it static. They're just replaying the same old prompts. And I really wish there'd be a bit more, you know, look at other opportunities than using recorded prompts all the time. Use synthetic speech, make it a more dynamic environment for people to play games in.
It seems like just in my evaluation of this market, and as well as being a lifelong gamer as well, that there's starting to become a market opportunity around games, you know, AAA titles, although to some degree indie titles are, you know, can witness this problem too. You know, you have these engines and these well-developed tools that can allow you to create these large game worlds, and then you create the large game world, and you have all these rich characters and this dynamic environment. Oh, but wait a minute, nobody budgeted in having 10,000 human narrators for the 10,000 characters across the universe, and so now what? And the now what has been various different awful answers that different companies have tried to apply to this, but it appears like there's a market opportunity around synthetic voice companies doing things to enable the creation in different ways from different companies I've seen, the lending of a lot of synthetic voices to fill that gap in a cost-effective way. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we do a lot of, I mean, it's a separate area on flight simulators. We lots of our voices are used in background to sort of simulate radio traffic and things like that. And in the gaming world, you could have a lot more, you know, inputs going on around you, you know, of events that are going to happen or may happen or whatever. So it's not just a visual; it could also be a, you know, an audio world. It's quite interesting because they view it as they need to have high production standards on games for the the sound as such. Whereas whenever I sort of see kids playing games, there's also a lot of noise going on in the room, you know, if they're multiplayers around.
To put it
So you
mildly.
kind of think, what does it matter? You know, if if you're having more fun by having, you know, rendering sound that maybe it's not such high quality, but you know, you're adding to the game, does it really matter? But you know, it's I think it's an area that could be explored by the game manufacturers and publishers.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I'm glad to hear you say that. I think it's going on now. To me, it stands out as a particular use case. I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about. Audrey, I'm going to go to you with this story. With what you do in your line of sight, what are your thoughts? What stood out?
I loved it. I was so excited when I saw it. I mean, I did the sonic branding for the Xbox 360. So I'm in gamer land like you, Bradley, and you know this, that we've done that. And we've done games and we've done a whole bunch of different things. Then kind of went to a different place a little bit. And now we're at a place where, and you have a young son, and this is first of all the metaverse. Second of all, it's exploding faster. Like if you have a kid in your house, or not even a kid, 18, 15 years old, 25 years old, whatever. Bradley, if you have anybody, this is big. This is really big, in my opinion, for what I do, because this presents so much more opportunity to make an immersive experience, to bring more of a connection with the customer, the gamer. And the way that this stuff is going, I mean, we have this one room, it's got the lights. The whole room is strung with the lights. You've got the hoodies. You've got, you know what I mean? You've got a whole culture. It's a culture. Like now everybody's finding about like NFTs and everything else. This culture is rolling. And this happening now is going to parallel it. So by the time they're really, really there, they're going to both be there, and it's going to be fantastic. And we're building products right now that I can't talk about, but they don't exist right now, that are going to make that experience go through the roof. I mean, I just find the whole entire world, and taking everything, the whole universe of gaming. And I'm watching, you know, the drone international tournaments on a major network last week. I mean, and the announcers and the voices and everything else. What opportunity it presents for me is, and everything we talked about here is, there's so much about voice. There's not as much about sound and music that supports underneath it. And I'm at a conference right now, and everyone is talking about voice. But I think we really need to understand that voice is going to live next to sounds, and those sounds are going to live next to music. And if they're not built in a holistic way for that brand, I heard some things that people got funding for that blew my brain, but the voice part was great or not. And the parts of it were just not quite there yet. So when these new products come out, it's going to make it imperative for this stuff to sound really great.
Bradley, Audrey makes a great point with the holistic piece that I'm fully biased towards from my Spotify background for music and recommendations, and now at Helios with tone of voice. So emotion is the last part of that announcement, right? Some of that news. So part of that SDK, I think they say joy, anger, I think discuss as well. So sort of like major angles. How exactly they do it, if it's accurate, is a whole different thing. But just like Audrey was saying with the sound, which can evoke emotion, I mean, for us, what we do, you can think of it like emotion detection within a voice, right? Like you get the whole message, and that works either synthetically, trying to describe and convey an emotion, or vice versa, where the machine would essentially be trying to understand the emotion. So that's a huge part, and one we fully agree with you, Audrey, and one we're fully close, watching with Helios.
When the game hears me saying these players are cheating, I expect it to then start letting me win.
Well, that's where we're going. Bradley's going to be top gamer in the world soon on the circuit.
No, look, 5 or 6 years ago, it actually might have been longer than that, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, there was a report that came out. Yes, what year is it? 2021? Yeah, this was 2013, 2014. So 7 or 8 years ago, there was a report that came out that said the average age of a gamer, that's a term that can be loosely defined, but the average age of a gamer in the United States at that time was 42 years old. And so today I am 41 years old, and and I'm a shameless gamer. We have our Thursday night Call of Duty with people all over the country, and doctors, lawyers, executives, and that's our version of hitting the golf course in many ways during the week. And so it's good to see gaming continue to evolve, because I would put gaming alongside education as maybe sort of the last holdouts of where voice and AI has fully and meaningfully penetrated to the extent it should. Any closing thoughts on this?
I think there's a lot of money going around. There's so much money going around and people investing in this sort of thing that and then we're talking in the past year, 2 years. And it's going to be very interesting. I think the Nintendo Switch is going to be great. I think the SoundHound is going to be great. I mean, these were good topics. This was a good one, Bradley. I'm glad you didn't take the questions away.
Hey, yeah, no, we tried.
It was a nice loop as well, because SoundHound and ReadSpeaker work together. So I think it was one of the American film producers said a lot of the effect of a film is the actual soundtrack and how it makes you feel. So that kind of emphasized Audrey's point about music and speaking and such.
Sure. Well, look, to all of y'all, Audrey, Paul, Sean, thank you for taking the time, sharing your expertise and your experiences with not just me, but the audience as well. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Bradley.
Thank you for having us.
For This Week in Voice, Season 6, Episode 5. Thank you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, listening, if you're listening on your podcast provider of choice, we have one more episode coming before the end of the calendar year. It'll be a year in review, sort of retrospective, probably at some point next week. But until then, thank you for watching the show, and until next time.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me hit stop recording.